Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. We have a special guest today that I promise you is going to be one of the more unique interviews that we've done and one of the more unique that you'll ever hear. Along with me, Logan Landers is our producer and engineer. Vincent Turner not able to be with us today, so our co-host and founder gives us his many blessings, but he's off on assignment. So joining me today, Harper LeBel in studio with us. Thank you, Brian, for being a part of today's show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, today we're going to get to talk to a national champion, an accomplished author. Dave, we're going to talk about your book a little bit, and a man who has very unique stories as a Secret Service agent for two different presidents and vice presidents. We'll talk about all of that. Today's guest here, Dave Hoffmann. Dave, thank you for being a part of the show here today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really excited to yap with you guys and share some stories and enjoy the day. Thanks.
Well, yakking is what we're going to do. Now, born on July 24th, 1970, right? The Hoffmann family. I don't know how many brothers or sisters you have, but I'd like to go back a little bit. And when did sports become, was it Little League Baseball? Was it Pee Wee football? Or what was your first inkling of going, man, this is really cool. I like being out on a field and running around.
You know what? I actually I think it was soccer. You know, getting out and running around and I mean I didn't even know really all the rules and everything, but I thought everybody looked like they were having a good time out on the field and I used to go watch the Pee Wee football guys. I love the sound of the pads smacking and just to be out there and watch. And my folks didn't let me play tackle football until I was in 8th grade. And when I could play for a school team, and that was down in Texas, outside Dallas. But that was something I had been chomping at the bit for a long time to finally get out there.
Was there a college team or a pro team that you kind of associated with growing up that you go, man, this is so cool getting to watch these guys?
Yeah, exactly that. And so for me, living outside Dallas, Texas, it was obviously the Cowboys back in those days. And so, I always wore number 33 and Tony Dorsett, and then it was a little bit different as I kind of turned into a linebacker. But then eventually in college, I was informed after I had signed my letter of intent that they don't retire numbers anymore at the University of Washington, but they did back in the day. And there was an old war hero from World War I that wore 33, so I had to pick something else. And so that's when I kind of got to a real linebacker number, and chose Randy White's 54.
Yeah, wow. The Manster was certainly one of those guys that who wouldn't want to play like him, right? Now, the picture you just had, that was 91. Is that your freshman year at UW?
No, that's my brother Steve. So
okay.
So he's 3 years after me, and we started together my last season up there. So that was a real treat.
Well, Pioneer High School is in San Jose. You've said you grew up in Texas, but you've been all over the place, right? A little bit, or at least you had
That's right.
Several different experiences. There are not a whole lot of Cowboy fans in San Jose, are there? I mean, everyone there was Niner fans back in the day. Did you have to kind of lower your allegiance to the Cowboys?
You know what? It was kind of easy to do that, especially after they fired Landry. It was not hard to kind of pull back the reins on them and be just a general observer. And of course the Niners were rocking and rolling and at the top of their game. So I moved to the Bay Area in San Jose back in '83, halfway through. So it was just right after that first season of football that we packed up and headed out west.
How old were you at that time?
13 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of 13-year-olds would say, Mom, Dad, they kick, they scream. They don't want anything to do with leaving because they've got a certain amount of friends and they've had them for such a long period of time. Was that anything part of what your childhood was like when you had to move?
You're exactly right. It was extremely frustrating. It was kind of like the world as you knew it was just changed in the smack of an instant. And it was one of those things where I had just come back. I was just a Texas kid, loved football. I remember I had just come back from fishing down at the pond I used to go to, and I used to catch catfish and sit around out there all day and goof off. And I came home and I was informed that hey Dave, guess what, we've got some news for you. And I took it bad. Yeah. And then I just realized that I've got to get over it and make the best of it. And it was really interesting, culturally and everything to move out west. And but in a way, it was really good for me.
Now, the Red River rivalry, to say that 3 times real fast, obviously big. And was that a part of your life? Because I want to know if you're Oklahoma. I know a lot of Oklahoma folks that love noodling. Have you ever been noodling?
You know what? I have not, but I know a lot of folks that have, and they still have all their digits. So that's I don't know if that means they're good at it or bad at it. So
I don't either. I just know that the scars on their forearm, they can go, this was a 24-pounder and this was something else.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Now,
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, were you more an Aggie or a Longhorn? And tell me a little bit about your college.
It sounds kind of cheesy, but I really liked all the teams down there, and then even SMU down there was rolling with with their big paydays. Yeah, exactly, and they had Dickerson and those guys, and so it was fun. I always just love watching like you said, the Red River rivalry, and it was that time of year with the state fair and all that, and so we'd always there was a lot of smack talked at school those days, but it was always fun, and it was kind of interesting.
And SMU, they played there in Dallas Stadium for years, so that's a very interesting. Who wouldn't want to? Hey, this is it. They're on the news every week. You'd have to go outside of the Dallas city limits, of course, and because Texas is so big, that's an obvious. But to get Longhorn, Aggie, maybe the Red Raiders, go to Waco for Baylor information. All these great schools that were a part of the Southwest Conference back in those days.
Absolutely. And then, and I think what kind of brought me back to looking at Oklahoma, just as a fan standpoint, was of course Bosworth. And I think you probably were around in those days playing in the league. And it was a character, fun to watch, and kind of, I have to admit, I kind of got one of those bad haircuts, not quite like his, but it was in that range.
Well, I got to play with Brian in Seattle, and he was coming back from a pretty bad shoulder injury that ended his career pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But what an interesting character and a great football player too. I mean, the speed that he had from the time that he got himself on that campus, he was plug and play, in my opinion. And one of those guys that, the hair, and you look at that, the headbands. But he backed it up on the field, didn't he? I mean, he was one of those guys that, say what you will about the imagery or the sizzle, but there was some stake to him as well.
Absolutely. And you're exactly right. And I think that's one of the beautiful things so many of us love about football is, there's talk going on all during the week and everything, but really at the end of the day, it's about your actions. It's about getting after it and showing what you can do. And a lot of the best players in the world never even have to open their mouth. They just do it, to entertain us a little bit. But the guys that are the very best at it, it's all action.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian certainly fulfilled that. So very interesting. I still have a pair of those 44 blue gargoyle blue glasses. They're upstairs somewhere. I can find them in a minute, but I think that's just one of the cool things. He did something that was very unique. His first year in the pros, he hated Elway for whatever reason. He couldn't stand Elway.
Right.
But he would make a T-shirt and the old logo with 44, his number, and then he had the circle with the line through it, right, the diagonal.
Yeah.
And he'd pay people to go to Denver, San Diego, Kansas City, Oakland, and Seattle, and they would sell these shirts. And he did it. It was his company that designed them. So even though it was an anti-Boz, he sold out 20,000 T-shirts in Denver before the fans even entered into the stadium from their trip to the car. Hey, get yourself a Boz T-shirt. I hate Boz. And he would sell out every week. So I think he learned from a marketing perspective to be very savvy. Even if they don't like me, I don't care. They're talking about me, and they took advantage of that.
I think you're right. I think he was always a little bit kind of ahead of the game, and now you see him on these Dr. Pepper commercials and all this kind of stuff.
They're hilarious, aren't they?
It's great. It's great, and people like that can kind of do it all.
There we go.
Logan, be a great actor.
Yeah,
there it is.
Yeah, the Bozbusters. That's a different model, but the same type of thing, and he's behind it. All right, before we get Brian in, I want you to bring up some of the great Texas, some of the new California. How did a young Dave Hoffmann focus on what he needed to focus on early on in his high school days, to where he started realizing, hey, this is not so hard. I'm getting it. I'm getting good, and I might be able to play at the next level.
Yeah, so I think it was, and of course, being the new kid out there in San Jose, it was, you wanted to prove something, and there was a lot of, at that age, all these young guys are starting to go through adolescence, and they're talking, so much smack, and it was fun for me just to kind of think in my head. I was really looking forward to camp, and just on the Frosh Soft team at Pioneer High School. We were not known for being like any kind of powerhouse school or anything like that in football, but it was just fun. It was just going to be fun to get out there and play. And the good thing coming out is I didn't play linebacker in eighth grade until we were playing for this little, I don't know, city championship game in Garland, Texas. So all 6 middle schools, that were out there, we ended up finishing pretty high up, but it was the very last game that they put me in a linebacker, and instead of playing, I think I was like defensive end or something like that before, and it was just fun to and really I was just going off of instinct and just enjoying just getting up to full speed and in a real quick moment, and just tying into people, and it was just a great. It just felt free that I was out there running around, and so when I came out to San Jose, and we were in the first meeting, and the coaches wanted to know what we played, I just told them, I think I said running back and linebacker, so I kind of had a fresh. I wasn't known as being anything else like ahead of time, so I was just kind of like the new guy, and so they had to take my word for it that I was linebacker. And of course, the coaches could have put, they could have put me wherever they wanted, but it worked out there, and I just I didn't really get high level coaching until probably my senior year, but it was in high school, but it was and I wasn't obviously the biggest guy in the world, still not, but I was, even in college and a little bit in the NFL I played, I was never more than, like 230, 232, something like that. I was, and at 6'2", that's really not that, it's on the smaller side. And so I just, I knew I was just going to have to play with full effort and intensity, and we'll see what happens. And I really had a great time. And of course, sports is a great way to make friends and buddies when you come into a new place. It's always it's kind of the doors open, and you kind of get to know people a little better, and you got some buddies to hang out with,
and coming from Texas, Dave, excuse me for interrupting, but yeah. I would imagine there's a couple of the local kids that may not like you because you're Texas or whatever, but there may be the ones that really respect the fact that, hey, I know enough about Texas high school. We would welcome a new guy that comes from Texas. Let's talk about, what was it like for you when you played in Texas, blah, blah, blah. Did that help forge some relationships early on for you?
Yeah, and it did. You're right. And that's something that is obviously something that they're known for down there. And it was, and obviously the stadiums were a lot smaller out here. You've got a high school in every other corner out here in California. Yeah. And back there was just these monstrous stadiums, and it was fun to tell some stories. And even though I hadn't been playing for long, it was fun to, and of course everybody, I talked funny, as they say, and with my accent back then, but it was, which is long gone, but it was, that's kind of what I was, known for, being the new kid that talked funny. And it was honestly, it all kind of helped, to meet people. And, I guess you're kind of stuck, your parents move, and you don't have a choice. So you really have to make the best of things. And so that's what I was just trying to do, and trying to enjoy myself. And it's fun. You're in the weight room, or you're playing basketball with the guys after school, and it's sports to me was really it was it just let me be free and kind of, and I don't know how it is for everybody else, but you kind of like know it at a certain age when you're younger that, hey, and I'm pretty fast. I can throw guys around or whatever, and you think, maybe I will have a chance, like you were saying before. When did you realize that you might have a chance? It's kind of like it is for a lot of people. It's a dream, but you think it's a dream that can come true, and you can attain it if things go right.
Oh, absolutely. Brian, I've hogged most of the conversation. Go right ahead.
No, I'm following right along. I mean, honestly, Dave, anything you want to keep going on and talking about, because we're kind of getting into the college stuff now. So
Yeah.
if you want to touch on like the early college stuff, first getting into Washington and everything,
Yeah.
kind of how that went, and was it like a wake up call, or was it just you felt natural, or how did that go?
Yeah, well, it was, the whole recruiting process to me was something that was new. And like I said, our school wasn't a powerhouse. I didn't have anybody else to kind of tell me, this is what you can be looking for. This is what to expect. And that it was all kind of I was just kind of winging it and going along with it. And I had trips to, back in the day. And when I was a freshman and sophomore and things in high school, the USC was really kind of king of the Pac-10 back then, and it was which it was the Pac-10 in those days, and I really wanted to go, and I wanted to be recruited by them. I got the letters and all that kind of stuff from them, but they wanted me to come down, and they called last second one time and wanted me to come down. 5 or 6 hour drive, the next day for a game. And I told him I couldn't do it. I didn't have a car, back in those days or anything. And I was, and I could tell, by the guy's voice, he's oh, really? You can't make it down. I said, Coach, I'm just telling you, I'd love to, trust me. And that was kind of when the letters all stopped. And I realized I must have not been all that high on their list anyways, if they let something like that, kind of change their trajectory for me. So
wouldn't you normally think, Dave, that there's a plane ticket waiting for you at the airport, and they're going to have to pick you up?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe these days, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Wow.
No, that's and so I was always high on Washington, and I always really enjoyed Coach James and the coaching staff, and then I always liked the consistency that they had up there. Whenever they'd send you a letter, it had all these bowls around the fringe, and they went to a bowl every year, and of course it wasn't always the Rose Bowl or the Orange Bowl, but it was something, and it just showed me consistency, and that was really, and then of course I went up there on my recruiting trip and linked up with Mark Brunell and Steve Ettman and James Clifford and Jaime Fields and Tanaka Smith, all these old guys, and we just, I don't know, there was something, and I think most of us all just committed verbally that weekend, and I came back and canceled the rest of my trips, and it was, and so that was, that was kind of the story of how I got up there, and kind of, Brian, to answer your question, it was a real eye opener, and I'm one of these guys. I've got two brothers. Steve, the one you saw that played with me at Washington, he was 6'6.5" and 250, a defensive lineman. Come on, he could have gone to Miami, Notre Dame. I mean, he was one of those guys, and and we all started. Washington started getting a lot of those type of players after we started going to the Rose Bowls and doing that kind of stuff, and it changed. But he had a much different recruiting story than I did, and it was. But it was, and then my brother Matt. Awesome guy, probably the most talented guy of all of us, and it was one of those times where you just had to kind of make the best of it again, like I'm saying, because I'll tell you, man, I was so homesick when everybody dropped me off, mom and dad and everybody, and they go back to the car, and I think, holy shit, man, they're gone. Like, this is, my life has changed, once again after the move, and then I just, and I think it just hit me differently than it hit my brothers. They were, hey, I love you. See you at Christmas, and then we're off and running. But to me, it kind of shook me up, and it was something I'd share a little bit with some of the other freshmen, and half our squad was from California, so probably half the guys felt like I did, and it was kind of eye opener. And then you just try to get busy with football and trying to and of course. We weren't very good. We were 6-5. It was the year and back in those days, we all pretty much redshirted. So I think there was only a couple players on our class of '88 that didn't redshirt, and we were frustrated. We wanted to go to the bowls, like I said, that we were kind of counting on, and it was an eye opener, and it was real frustrating. And they're talking about coaches possibly getting let go and this and that, and that's when the rumor mill starts after a 6-5 season. And it was there was something about our class and then the class like in front of us that just had a kind of a quiet confidence, I think is what I'd say. And there wasn't a whole lot of bitching and moaning. It was all pretty much like, let's get into the weight room, and then let's get on the field and let's just start training our ass off, like kind of like you did when you first started playing the game, and you have that zeal, and when you go out and push your truck around or whatever. It was just let's do that, and let's talk is cheap. We all kind of had that idea and that mentality, and let's get out and do it. And that very next year we made a huge difference. We were only 8-4, but we lost a couple games early, but we went to the Freedom Bowl and played a Emmitt Smith Florida Gator team and beat them up pretty bad. And it was if we had got our act. You always hate to say woulda, coulda, shoulda stuff, but if we had played like we did the second half of the season earlier on, and we kind of tweaked up our defense a little bit and brought some guys over from the offensive side of the ball we had a guy, Don Jones, that was like a second string fullback, but he is just a 240 pounds of just fast twitch, nasty, and he was. Yeah, and we brought him over and put him at defensive end, and we did that with a couple other guys. We had some safeties that were all world running backs back in high school, and we put them at strong safety and free safety, and had guys that could think on their feet, and we could run defenses that were that were pretty. And I haven't been everywhere, but I've seen a lot, and I feel like I know a lot, and we were running pretty we were moving fronts, we were changing things, we were baiting guys into faking coverages, sliding and other things.
Yep.
A little bit of zone blitz stuff, and we were tweaking things up, audibles based on the movement or the motion, and it was fun. And I think when the coaches do that and they trust you, and you kind of have that the trust, they believe in you, and we have guys that can run and hit and read and work coverages and maintain your rushing lanes and all that kind of stuff. Then once you do that, you can really start having fun, and that's what we started to do. And it was a great time, and we just started to really get after teams, and it was just flat out fun, man. It was great.
Before we go into Jim Lambright and his ability to recognize what different guys could do, you made a couple of very interesting points there. I termed the SC thing, if we go back to the USC experience, they were the ones that you had to beat in the Pac-10. I think everyone would agree with that. I think one of the issues that Arizona State would have, or maybe Stanford, or the University of Washington, maybe Oregon. Well, we've got 3 really good players on defense, and they've got 8. When did you start to realize that this recruiting class that you had from '88, we've got 8 too, if you know what I mean? We've got some bodies here. We may not have the same number of 5 stars that SC has,
right,
but we've got a bunch of 4 stars, and we're going to be a little bit hungry. You mentioned going in the weight room and doing all the running and everything that you got to do to prep yourself. Dave, what was the part that you started to figure out from a organizational standpoint? This guy Empman is unbelievable. I really like, Brunell doesn't have the strongest arm, but he hits this guy while he's in stride.
Right.
And he's so hard to defend because he gets the ball out early. When did you start to figure that these guys are, we've got some talent here. We're young, but we're going to be really good in a couple of years.
Yeah, I think it was toward the end of that 89 year.
Okay.
And then going into 90, and I think it all kind of came together. There was a home game against USC. It was probably our third game of the season, and we Marinovich and those guys were coming up. They were the hot shit, and it was time. They'd been king for a while, and it was time. And if we were going to make a statement, it was then. It was a nice.
You had lost at USC. That's your freshman year, right? Your freshman year. You go out there. They're number 9 in the country. They beat you 24-16.
Yeah, exactly.
Is Marinovich behind center on that year too?
That's right. Yeah, okay. Exactly.
Then he has to go up and take you in Seattle. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's great. And so we were, we were hitting on all cylinders. We had suffered some injuries, but that's the game. We had, I had just moved over to the Mike linebacker from the backer spot because James Clifford, who was the freshman Pac-10 player of the year before, he ended up tearing his ACL like early that week. And so I just bumped over, and Chico Fraley from LA slid back in, and we were out there, because before that it was James Clifford and I, and so in that it was kind of a seamless. It was all pretty seamless, and even though in your heart, when you lose a good buddy or a teammate, it always, you hurt for him, but we had to stay focused, and James Clifford wanted us to stay focused and all that, and so we were humming, and I don't know, there was a feeling, and you can say this, but there really was a feeling that something special was going to happen. And long story short, we went out there and just knocked them out of there. It was 31-0, and it was a beautiful game. And the sun was shining out there, and I actually had some old friends up from Texas that week, and it was kind of it sounds corny, but the only thing I can think of, it was just beautiful. It was just like everything about it. And it was just, and you know how it is. You're banged up, it's early in the season, but it takes away some of the sting, some of the pain. And you feel like, and like you were saying a minute ago, you can see, down the road a little bit, and you don't want to get, ahead of yourself, but you can see that, and we might have a chance to do things here.
Well, the Todd Marinovich quote that in looking back at that season with you, is all I saw was purple. I didn't see any numbers or any. You bombarded him defensively and made him look like a redheaded stepchild, which he was redheaded, but no offense. 31-0 is the final there. You got 72,000 in the house. I'm sure it was rocking because SC would, they were number 5, right? They were number 5 in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. They were favored for sure. Yeah.
And a good team. And finally we've beaten them, and they had been to 4 Rose Bowls in a row, if I'm not mistaken. So
I don't even remember, but all I knew is they were kicking ass, forever. And they had kicked ours the previous season, even though we felt like we hung with them, but it's just not the same. And the whole manhood thing is, we couldn't stop their run, and that's really comes down to, you can really tell a lot about a team by, how they run the ball, and then on defense, how you stop how you stop the run. And it's just kind of that, and coach, and going back to Coach Lambright for a minute, he would always tell me before the game, and he'd say, we have a whole lot of stuff saved up for these guys, but the first couple series, we're just going to go out there and play base defense, and you're just going to smash them and smash the shit out of them, and show them, and kind of just that, hey, we can do it this way and we can do it another way. And it's, it's always nice to get up a couple scores where they kind of have to throw the ball, and then you can start sending guys and kind of playing with them a little bit. But it was one of those things that we were just starting to kind of get there. We were just starting to feel, what I described as having options.
Well, talk a little bit about now as a linebacker. You had mentioned earlier that you were a defensive end at one point in high school, and you got moved to the inside, and that was a difference maker for you. In watching you play, you're a bend at the waist, lean forward guy. I never know if you're coming or not. That some linebackers like to sit with their hands on their knees, almost like what a tailback looks like before he gets it.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going to do because you're always looking like I'm going forward, even when you would drop back and you've got pass coverage. So kudos for you for that. But talk a little bit about how Cook and Emptman, I'm trying to think of who the other, I can't remember.
We had
right
Dennis Brown, we had Tyrone Rogers, and
dude, those guys,
so many guys. Yeah.
You couldn't block them. And if you can't block them, you got a guard or a tackle that's looking around and you've got a free lane. That must have been a eye opener for you in terms of, thank God our front is so good that nobody can block them, because it gives me a free lane in to make the tackle with the ball carrier behind the line of scrimmage. I'm making contact with him 3 feet before he gets to the line of scrimmage and zero gain. I mean, you guys became superstars because of that.
Yeah, you nailed it, and that it was so key that we all trusted each other and appreciated each other, because the same thing, and absolutely, we were blessed to have some badass defensive linemen that could play, and the thing is, it was going to keep coming because they also had. I played with the best linebackers, I think, in college football at the time, and they were, and you couldn't, double those guys because you're going to let us be free, and vice versa. And so it was like it was a challenge each week for offenses to try to figure out, and like, how are you going to block Steve Emtman? You're really not. You're just going to try to, slow him down a little bit, and
he gets a double, right, which means he frees somebody else up, right?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh,
right, exactly, and it was, and kudos to Jim Lambright too, that really taught us how to read linemen. When it was zone coverage, and I know you know this, but a lot of folks don't realize that linebackers, when they're playing man, obviously that's your first responsibility, whoever your guy is, or if you're playing combo coverage or whatever. But when it's zone, and you can learn to read the lineman, and there's some pre-reads, but there's some stuff that you can get baited on too. But when you really learn the art, and not. And like you were saying before, in my stance, I really tried not to waste any steps. I really tried to get my read down in a split second, and make and step in a way, because you realize every fraction of a second's huge when you're up in that phone booth. Everybody's so tight, and it's so quick, and it's just getting the right read, getting a true read, not getting sucked into play action and all that kind of stuff. And it was, I'll tell you a little story that I was, somebody gave me tickets to a Seahawk game. I'm sure you were out there, and I think it was obviously the Seahawks were home. It was against the Raiders, and I was up. It was me and Etman went, and we were sitting in the 300 level, right at the front, and it was, a normal fan would say, "Oh, this sucks," but it was like one of those angles that you'd like watch film from. It was one of those shots, and it was, and I remember I was watching it, and there was one guy out there, and the guy's become a friend now, and it was Ricky Ellison, and Ricky would not waste a step. He would. And he wouldn't even take just a little movement or anything. He would get his true read, and then he'd go downhill 100 miles an hour. And he wasn't a big guy either. He was kind of like myself. He was, maybe 230, and it was just downhill. And I mean, you try to block somebody that's got some nasty in them, and it's coming like that, and it's you're going to win, and that kind of play is contagious to to a defense and the D lineman and stuff. And so, we all kind of motivated each other by looking around. And Ricky, who I was in my next job, we'll talk about later. But when I was with the Secret Service, I was talking with some lady at the Reagan Library one day, and she says, "You'd really like our friend Ricky." And I said, "Oh, that's And I said, "Tell me about him." And she started talking about the Ricky Ellison, the football player. And I said,
Yeah.
I said, and I told her the story about this game and how it changed me, in the way I played. It wasn't like a huge change, but it was what I was going to focus on, going into the next spring ball. And so going into the my sophomore year, the year we're talking about right now, beating 31-0, and it was the way I was gonna read and do things, and just take my angle and keep it, and bubble the play or make the tackle. But either way, you're gonna destroy the offense's plan. And it was so watching him that day really was. Uh, it was one of those things that you don't want to say life changing, but it was definitely game changing for me. The way I played.
And without a conversation with Ricky, you're just watching and observing. Now, I thought you were going to say it was going to be Kurt Marsh, the former
Yeah,
Husky offensive
yeah,
lineman who was playing for the Raiders at that time.
yeah,
Big dude, small waist, very athletic, and then Bo, Mark
yeah,
Wilson was in that game. I mean, there
yeah,
were not Willie Gall, two of them, one of the wide receivers, Hall of Famer. Gosh, I can't remember right off the top of my head.
yeah,
Please forgive me, but
yeah.
that for you to observe that, it reminds me a little bit of the Carson Palmer deal where he and Chad Ochocinco end
Mm,
up getting a plane from Cincinnati to watch a Monday night game in Indianapolis. And Carson got some seats pretty much behind the Colt bench. And all he wanted to do was watch Peyton. I want to watch
mm,
Peyton Manning do stuff. And he watched him in warm-ups, and he watched him after the first series, and they come off. He takes his helmet off. He puts the ball cap on. He talks to the offensive coordinator. What was his name?
oh,
Tom.
I know you're talking. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know you're talking about.
And
Yeah,
then he goes to the wide receivers, then he goes to the running backs, he goes to the offensive lineman, he throws 3 balls, he takes his cap off, puts his helmet on, goes back up, and does the same thing. He
yeah.
said that's the hardest working guy in pro sports. I've never seen. I don't work anywhere close to that. I'm
Wow.
not calling your situation identical to that, but you learned, wow, there's a different way to play, and I think I can maximize my game by watching what Ricky did.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's exactly, and those were the feeling. And so walking back to the car after the game with Evan, and I was just thinking already, just like the story you explained. I felt like I had an advantage or something. It felt like
Mhm.
it was just I was so thankful. And then of course, to meet him all the years later, and we stay in touch some. And he's just a great guy. He'll always have I guess we kind of have some of the same screws loose, and it's we all kind of connect a little bit. And it's and it but you're exactly right. And just to see, you know the overall demeanor, and how they do it, and the kind of the artwork of it. And then with Peyton like that, I mean, it's down in his soul. That's who he is. And he's gonna, whatever he does, he's gonna go at it like that. And I think we all I think if we all think back, we all have some stories like that along the way, of people that you see, and it influences you in a certain way. And that was that for me, that was just it was awesome. And then to have your teammates and your coaches really starting to trust you and believe in you. And I mean, it was great. It
Well,
was some
and,
of the
and your
funnest days.
coaches. So, did you ever have a conversation with Jim? It's during practice, and let's say the scout team defense is going against the number one offense. And coaches usually do this: they cross their
Mhm.
arm, or
Yeah,
they're looking at the piece of paper with the practice schedule, and you're close enough nearby to go, "Hey, coach,
yeah,
uh, this is pretty stinking good what we got going here." He goes, "Look,
yeah,
dude, you have no idea how many blitzes that I've already considered for each and every one of you because I know you can do it." Right? The
yeah.
confidence of him being able to call stuff that he couldn't do because the personnel was right. You had the
Right.
speed up front, you had the smarts of everybody, you had the aggressive safeties that could play. I call
Yeah,
them tweeners. You can play the run
that's
and
right.
do that
That's right.
aggressively, and then they can drop back and they can cover the fastest receivers in the conference. You had a little bit of everything at that time.
That's so true. And everybody could run. Everybody had a good head on the shoulders. Could make split second decisions. Could understand. Um, the audibles that we were doing, why we were doing them, and it makes a big difference, I think, too, when guys know not just what you're supposed to do, but why you're supposed to do it. It's kind of like you teach your kids when they're young and stuff. You don't just tell them don't do it,
Yeah.
but you tell them why sometimes. And we all knew why we were doing things, why we were making adjustments, and if you did something last second that might seem out of the ordinary. I mean, your guys trusted you, and they knew, all right, Hoff's, this is what he said. This is what we're going to do, and it's going to work. And they, there was just a faith in each other, and it was something that we also got a real tight bond. As things go on, and in the locker room, it does matter how people connect, and I know especially in the league, guys have families and stuff already, a lot of them, and so everybody's just kind of doing their own thing. But in college, we're all kind of in the same boat, and especially back in those days, nobody's making any money, and we're all just dudes, man, and so we really bonded well, and we'd hang out, and we had it was one of those times, and I have been on teams that kicked ass, and been on teams that had their ass kicked all the time, and it was there was something different and special about that crew, and it was I think we all kind of at some point had some moments like I just described about Ricky, but it was just it was one when we felt like we can actually do this, and it was you almost don't want to say it, and it's like one of these things that and that year, I just going back to that sophomore year, we were ranked, I think, number 2. We had just clinched our first Rose Bowl, and we have UCLA come to town. I don't think it's week 10 or something like that. We were ranked 2, and I think Notre Dame or somebody was ranked 1, and man, they beat us, man. And it was like it was. I mean, it still hurts today to think about, but I mean, all we had to do was win that, and we ran the table the rest of the year, and we would have had another ring. But the thing is we all knew we screwed up, and it was and there was no excuses for it. But nobody, we didn't bitch a whole lot about the UCLA game. We just kind of focused and said, I mean, let's, kind of going back to that talk is cheap thing. And we just said, but let's get after it and make sure it doesn't happen again. And so going into that junior year, it was an attitude of, it was fun, but it was like, kind of a grown up fun.
Yeah,
we
you had
had
a
learned a
purpose.
lot.
Do me a favor and go back to this 90 real quick. San Jose State, you beat the brakes off them. Then you go to Purdue. What was West Lafayette like? Anything special there, or is it just another game?
Yeah, it was. Well, you know what? It was interesting, the fact that I think it was my first time going back to the Midwest to play. We eventually went back to Nebraska years later and that kind of stuff. But it was, and what I remember about that at the day before the game, we went out to do our little walk around, and the grass was so long, and I thought, man, all these teams are going to do this. Playing against the Huskies that have, we had Napoleon Kaufman and all these guys that could fly, and they're gonna do what they can do, and I couldn't blame them. I mean, I would too, but it was, I remember it was like it was Indiana like pork day, and they had corn and pork on the scoreboard and all that. I had never seen more farms, and I think it's, I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing 9/10 of the state's got beautiful farms on it, and but it was, we were out there, and if it wasn't for that stadium, I think it was just, I mean, there would have been another farm, but it was fun, and it was one of those experiences where it was, for me being a younger guy, it was one of those experiences where I was just soaking everything in, from the plane ride to, where we stayed at the hotel to all those little things. I was just soaking it in. And that's why I remember that stupid stuff like that was flashing on the scoreboard, because it was just, I was still a youngster, So it was just
well,
so
33,000 is what the listed attendance was there. And then you come home, you beat SC, the beat breaks off. That's all I saw was purple Marinovich game. Then you go to Folsom Field in Boulder. That was a rough trip for you there. You lose 2014. Talk a little bit about that CU game.
Yeah, they were, and I think it was the year before too. They had just, I mean, they were just bad. They had speed. I mean, they were nasty. And you know what I think is that we really learned a lot by playing those guys. And you realize, you'll talk to guys later that say, hey, we learned a lot by watching this and that, that you guys did. Well, we did by watching those guys and playing against them. And it was an honor to step on the field with those guys. They were warriors, and it was a true honor. And it was, we were right there. We had some balls dropped, and it was so close, and we just screwed the pooch, and it was an eye opener. But they deserved to win. I mean, they
they were good.
I mean, they were really good. And they had speed, they had nastiness, they had the whole thing. They had a good coaching staff. And
I imagine half your guys knew half of their guys, because both of you recruited California kids from all over the place. They were probably teammates together in high school or played.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I remember in Pittsburgh, the guys that went to Colorado were, they were all LA guys, and it was just it was just one of those connections, and you got some scouts and some recruiters and this and that, and they got good pipelines to great players, and it was they really had it humming down there for a while.
All right, do me a favor. Let's go real quick. You've never been to Arizona State before. This is your first time, right? You beat Arizona State. Anything special about Tempe?
You know what? I just had a great time down there. I love playing on the grass, and I just just playing on some real grass and playing down there in the sunshine, and it was it was great.
And then you go to Stanford 2 weeks later. You beat Oregon, by the way. They were ranked number 19 in the country at the time. Then Stanford, you're on grass again there.
Exactly, and that was fun. It was, and I think that might have been the game I had. These days I would have been thrown out for 3 weeks, but I think that was the McCaffrey shot on senior Ed. What a tough guy, man. Big. I mean, he probably could have played tight end. He was a long guy, but
surprisingly, he's a big dude, right? I mean, he was a big dude for a wideout. Are you kidding me?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And so it was fun, to come back and play and have some high school buddies, come to the game, and some coaches and some family friends, and just right up the road from San Jose, literally half hour. And so it was always a treat to always come back to Stanford and Cal. It was great.
Between Stanford and then Folsom Field and Boulder, are those two of the most beautiful campuses? And there's not a stitch of paper anywhere, no bubblegum wrappers anywhere.
That's right. Gorgeous. That's right. Spotless,
yeah.
And just and then with the mountains out there in Boulder too, hanging over. And I would have enjoyed it more. It would have looked prettier if we would have won, but it was it was tough. Yeah, but gorgeous.
All right, then you return home. You got Cal, you got Arizona. Then you mentioned that UCLA. That was the 3 of 3 home games, the third of 3. What was Washington State like? I've heard people say that Pullman, Washington is the place where elephants go to die. Was it like that for you?
Yeah, you know what? More or less. Yeah, exactly. It was very, and I guess it all depends on the elephant, but it's like it's very unique, I'll say. And, they're out there, and that's the entertainment. There's not much else to do out there. So, everybody waits for weeks for the next home game. And, and if they fill it up 3 quarters, they're, the whole town's happy, and it's just different. It's just different. But there's some interesting people. Yeah.
You beat them there that year, and then you lose to them, I think, your senior year, right? Only 37,000 people there. It's a real small stadium, but when it gets packed, it's pretty loud there, isn't it?
It was, yeah, exactly. And it was what they call the Snow Bowl on my senior year, and it was coming down, and we went out for warm-ups, and we realized, holy crap, man, everybody's slipping and can't stand up, and we didn't bring anything other than those old nubby turf shoes. Really, we should have gone in and put on some type of cleats or something, and we had nothing else. And they come out, and it's just so hard to get started and stop. And you played in a lot of that type of stuff, and it's just it was a mess. And I remember telling the guys, I said, hey, if you're in coverage, I mean the refs can't see and everything else. I mean, just grab your guy, and they're not going to throw the flag. I mean, the weather was coming down sideways, sleet, and they Bledsoe was there. He had that gun, so he sent his guys deep a couple times, and it worked, and they beat us.
Yeah, that was not in the 89, or excuse me, the 90 season. You
No,
go there.
the 90, the 92.
You beat the brakes off them 55-10. And then the Rose Bowl. What was that experience like for you? I mean, did you eat 3 prime rib steak dinners at the Lowry's place? And, is there any portion of that you remember? They go, man, this is so stinking cool to be rewarded the way that we are in California. The weather's great, the parade, the game itself against Iowa. Give us a brief thought about your first Rose Bowl experience.
And that time of year, and then coming from Seattle, the rain's coming down and the wind's whipping, and you go pull into the palm trees and beautiful weather. And I had no idea when they're talking about the Beef Bowl over at Lowry's. I had no idea about this whole thing, but it's as you probably heard, it's a tradition that's gone on for decades and decades, and the teams go on separate days, and it's kind of an all you can eat prime rib. And man, not to this will be a commercial for them, but man, it's some of the best prime rib. It's just, and they just we just crushed it, and it was so good. And I'll tell you, in the years to come, we were like after we'd clinched the Rose Bowl, we'd start talking about Lowry's and start talking about it. And it was like, I mean, walking up the tunnel after we clinch it, and the guy from the Rose Bowl committee tells us we're talking about that. And and I mean, you can smell the au jus, man. It's just ridiculous. And
well,
so
when you're offensive line, I mean, Lincoln Kennedy eating 4 cows, man. That's
exactly.
Well, great reward for that. And then again, Nick Bell, I think you guys held Nick Bell at bay. So I'm thinking, great year. You end up winning the Rose Bowl. Was it 46-34? You're in front of 100,000 people, and you're young, and you've got about 6 months of free time to get yourselves ready. And that 91 season is magical. So you tell me what happened between the Rose Bowl and then between, let's say, training camp, spring ball, and all that other stuff that got you ready mentally, physically, and emotionally for that 91 season.
Yeah, and so just going back to kind of recap on some things, it was we enjoyed the win, of course, and something about that defense too is we we play our second string, and they were awesome. They deserve to be out there.
Sure.
But they honestly played almost 2 quarters a game, probably a quarter and a half for a lot of those games. And again, in the Rose Bowl, it could have been whatever, but Coach James, kind of the old school mentality and of having some respect, and also wanting those youngsters to get out there on the field, and he was kind of prepping the team for down the road. But the off season for me was really just there was an excitement in the air. There was an excitement about about training and about getting ready for the season. And there was and something we did for that season was we put because of the UCLA deal, we ended up putting a ladder on the wall, and so with every step, with every rung, we would put the name of the team up there that week. And so we started here and went to the top, but so whoever we played first was there, and then
so Stanford was the bottom rung of that ladder.
That's it. Exactly. And then and that was down here too, and it was where I'm living in the Bay Area right now. But it was, and then there's just a line through it, and then there was the next team, and so all we were doing was literally one game at a time, and it wasn't just a talk. It wasn't a saying that, people throw around. It was something that we really learned what that's about, the year before. And college football, you only have, a dozen games, and, back then at least. And it's, there's a lot of weight going into each game, and just to focus on just that, deal with your injuries, however, and get ready. And so we were just using that off season just to prep. And honestly, it was just all we were thinking about was that first rung. And then, in the back of your head, you're thinking about what the final picture might be, but you have to earn it, and it's all about getting it done. And we had a fun but a focused off season, and it was you put in so much work in football, and your body goes through you're playing with crazy injuries and this kind of stuff that you really have to, when you can, enjoy yourself and just, be with your buddies and your teammates and make the best of things, while still staying focused and still staying purposeful in what you're doing. And I think we had learned a lot about, how to do that the year before. And so, we were done talking about that UCLA loss. We were done talking about that kind of stuff. But it was always there in the back of your mind. It wasn't a fear, but it was a confidence. And let's not let this happen. And we know how to do it. We know how to not do this again. And we just it was an unbelievable focus and and I guess it was almost like being at Lowry's and having that prime rib right in front of your face. All you got to do is bite it, and it was like that was all we had to do was stay focused on the piece of meat and just take care of business and not get distracted.
Talk about during this off season, or especially when you go into camp. I'm going to bring up a couple of names that you're already very familiar with, but I'm impressed with as a group. You've got Gallagher, Cunningham. You've got Mala. I mentioned Lincoln Kennedy earlier. This is a pretty good offensive line. And if you're getting around that group of guys and stuffing at the point of attack, you know what I mean? I would imagine that you're building your own confidence going, this is one of the best offensive lines, biggest, most athletic that in all of college football. And we're tearing them up during 2-day practices early.
Yeah.
How did that build your confidence going into the Stanford? And then we'll talk about Nebraska in just a second.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think sometimes that can get overlooked on just the day-to-day, and especially like you said, early in camp, and some of the 9-on-7 stuff and this and that and the scrimmage situations, and awesome guys, not just great players, but great people. And they were bright, Ed Cunningham at center running the show, and our guards and tackles, and, Mala Link. You can't, you can't make it up. And they had great, they had Keith Gilbertson over there coaching and really helped the attitude and the know-how, and really helped them to focus on. But like you said, we could do 9-on-7 with them, and we could run 4 plays, and it would probably be a 3-yard loss average if you put in all the rushing. You know what I mean? It was just like we would smash them. But it was fun, and I think, and honestly, it had to help them too. And it was I don't know, what's fun walking into a stadium with a huddle full of just freaking warriors that can just, it's almost I don't want to say more fun playing on the road, but but you put on the black hat and you walk in there and you just say, what are you going to do about it?
Is there ever a time that you get the little giggle between you and, let's say, one of with the guy who's next to you, or you walk up to Evan or DeMarco Farr and go, their offensive line coach has just thrown his paper on the floor. He's taken his hat off. He's lost his headset because he's so mad that his guys can't push you.
It's like, what are you going to do about it? Yeah, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
exactly. And I remember a couple times just standing over the ball, and this was a kudos to my to the D line and the linebackers and the safeties and stuff. But I just stand over there and I just scream, "Run the ball! You know, and they look at you like you're crazy, but you're just having a good time, you know, and you let some of it, you know, and we'd all get into the pro wrestling talk and the Macho Man, and you know, because I mean, you remember it was just
Let
like
me tell you something, brother. It's fantastic. It's
big
guys.
clown. Yeah, exactly. It was just great times, and it was just like all that going on, and you're trying to make the best of every moment and just soak it in, and like we were talking about, you got to have a good time with it, because I mean, when you put in too much, you know, too much physicality and mental strain not to. And so that was yeah, you know, but playing against those guys and covering the tight ends and the backs and the guys that I did at practice, it really sharpens the blade of your skill sets, and really you know, focuses you know, really where you get down to the small stuff, the minutia. When you have things down, it was kind of like when I changed, you know, how I was reacting at the snap of the ball, just by not wasting a step. It sounds like a very basic thing to do, but I mean, everybody has a little twitch or a little thing that you know that you do at the snap of the ball sometimes on defense, because offense knows where it's going and this and that, and what they're doing, and what the check is, and you've got to try to figure that out in a fraction of a second, and that's what it's that, and then playing against great guys at practice, and really and you know, even our scout team, man, kudos to a lot of those guys. I'm sure it was probably the best scout team around, and they took pride in and getting after it, and it was fun. I try to walk down and shoot the bull with those guys all the time, and show them how much, you know, it was appreciated. You know, just like you were saying, just to sharpen your skills and play against some of the best guys in the world.
Well, and you get Matt Jones, for example. You've got Jay Berry. Talk about how good Bino Bryant was, to where the speed that he had, the power. Some of these guys, even though they're not getting a whole lot in 2 days in practices, but when they start breaking it open against Stanford, and then you start seeing them race down the field in Nebraska, there had to be a point where I go, these guys are freaking unbelievable, and we're stopping them every day. You got Napoleon Kaufman, who's sitting on the bench as a freshman, not get a chance to play with these guys.
I know, and it was incredible to have that many guys stacked up, and you know, the talent pool was just so deep and rich, and you know, these guys, you know, you'd come off the field and you'd turn around and watch the punt return, and because you know, you weren't just curious, but I mean, you wanted to see the show that was getting put on, or the kickoff. Man, you'd go stand up on the bench if you couldn't see, and I mean, you wanted to see these guys do their thing, and it was really special to just to watch their acceleration, and how, you know, when these guys get in the open field, and they got the, you know, every piston pumping, man. It's just like it's just really fun to watch, and yeah.
You open at Stanford. It's 42-7 is the final. So you got to figure, gosh, as much as we've been beating up on the offense, they're pretty stinking good. 42 points in your first game. I want to just stop right there. What was that like going to Lincoln? You know, getting off the plane. This is a big game. Keith Jackson does this game with, I think Bob Greasy was doing the game with him. You got ABC, you got 76,000. They were great fans. They didn't boo anything. They loved their team. They didn't boo you guys. Now, they may have said a couple of things about your mom or whatever. But what a great game. Oh my gosh, that second game against Nebraska.
Unbelievable. And you know, growing up where I did, in Texas, and that, you know, they were I mean, Nebraska back in those days, you remember when you were a kid, I mean, they were just kings of the country. And it was like, and you know, they were the first guys to really start having all these huge linemen, and their weight room was like just
legendary.
It was like a national archive. Yeah, it was just like unbelievable.
You had to have permission, and your permission came from the amount of weight that you could move just to get into the platform. Oh my god,
unbelievable. Yeah, exactly. And so it was, and so we went out there, and in our tradition, we go out there the day before and walk around for a half hour on the field. And sometimes we just go out there in our street clothes. Sometimes we put on some shorts and a t-shirt and do some pass drops or jack around. But this time it was late. Oh no, you know what I remember? They we got out there to the field and the lights were off and there was nobody to turn the lights on. Like it had to have been just a little hey, welcome to Lincoln kind of thing. It had to be because Coach James, of course, was just pissed.
We just happened to forget.
Exactly. And of course, there's nobody around to flick the switch. It's like, holy crap. And so we ended up I was just tooling around in that stadium and went in and found the weight room and kind of peeked in there. And it was just like, it was like the Smithsonian. It was just like, holy cow, we all kind of got quiet and we're peeking in there because you just remember, growing up, all the talk about it,
sure.
all the horses that were training in there, and it was and so we really it was something. Both my grandparents, both my grandfathers were born in back in Nebraska, and my grandpa Meyer used to say that the N stood for knowledge. On the helmet, and so
he must have been a closet Oklahoma fan to be able to
exactly
right,
exactly, and so but it they came to the hotel the night before and they had some old friends from Nebraska and stuff, and it was kind of an experience. It was almost a little surreal. And but you really got to stay focused, and this is the game that's going to tell us if beating these guys on the road and or not, and so it was really the eye opener for us.
Well, you got behind early too in that game, right? Was it 10-0 or something like that?
Yeah.
Billy Joe Hobart, say what you will about it. Here's what I watch: lasers. The ball didn't get more than 8 feet in the air, no matter how far he was through. Just threw it hard. If you were able to catch it, it's going to stick to you in one way, shape, or form. And I think just through a will of the mind of being able, we're going to do it again. And we're going to do it again. The next thing you know, it's 36-21. Take me through a little bit of that game. And again, the crowd was amazing, loud. They loved their team. They didn't boo you guys, but they respected you enough to where they get loud when it's 3rd and 4 and you get 6. And they get all upset, But I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. It was a great game. I enjoyed watching.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. And back in those days, the ESPN Saturday night game was kind of a newer thing or something, and so it was fun because you knew all your family all over the place was gonna be able to tune in, and so it was it was fun. And you're right, we went out there and on defense. We didn't start out that great. They had a few surprises for us, and we kind of got our act together and tuned it on. And going into halftime, defensively, I know we felt like all right, we're good now. But offensively, I think they still had to make some adjustments to get some things done. But they came out that second half and just really took care of business. And it was it was fun watching them. Like you're saying about Billy Joe, just throwing that on a rope. It was great. I remember there was a big 4th down play, and he threw it, I think, to Orlando McKay on a crossing route, kind of a deep crosser, and it was just, I'm sure he had already made up his mind in the huddle, where that ball was going, because it was one of those things. It was the 5-step drop, and he just ripped it, and it was good. And Orlando made the catch as he always did, and it was great. But it was. Yeah, there was a special feeling to it out there. There was a feeling of these fans know football. They appreciate football, and they you know what, they were not our best friends going in there, but it was all just football talk, and it was all and after the game, it was just and it was fun to have a good game, and I mean, when you play back there, I mean, you have to play your best. I mean, you got to show up, and everybody has to. And it was one of those feelings where it was extra special, and it was great. And the fans stood up and clapped for us walking off the field. That was that was a special moment to always remember. And I remember Jay Barry, who's from from Colorado took that draw play and ran it, I don't know, like 60 yards. And I was so happy for him. It was so happy to see him in the corner of the end zone, and back when you could take your helmet off, and he popped it off and was just having a good time with the fans down there. Man, I loved it. I loved it.
Well, Mario Bailey had a big game. Aaron Pierce, I thought he had some great catches over the middle. And Billy Joe, I mentioned him a little earlier. Didn't he have 2 picks early in the game? So for him to fight back the way that he did.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I would say, Dave, that and I wasn't there, so I don't know. But at the end of that game, I'm sure there were several players on that team, if not the entirety. We can play with anybody at any time.
That's what it was. Yeah. And I think that feeling in the locker room, it wasn't something that you were going to say out loud, but it's something you started to, that you really believed in. It wasn't just lip service, and it was, just keep taking care of things, and let's do this, but keep one rung at a time.
Well, the next rung is Kansas State, right? 56-3 at Husky Stadium. You got 71,000 for that. Arizona is next. You got 72,000 for that. I'm sure standing room only is a little bit harder to get by this time. Toledo, you beat them 48-0. Let's be fair. You probably, did you even play a half? Did you play into the second quarter?
I honestly, I don't remember, but probably late second quarter. Yeah.
Okay. And then a very good Cal team comes in, and you give up more points in that Cal game than you would for the rest of the season up until that Washington State game. I mean, Cal could play. They were ranked number 7. Is this Aaron Rodgers Cal? I don't think it is.
No, this was Pulowski.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
And they had a lot of they had some great players, and they ended up having a good year themselves. And Coach Gilbertson was our old coordinator, O-line coach, and I think he had bounced down there. I think that might have been his first year coaching. I don't remember, but I think it was. And he's a great recruiter, so it probably was that year. And he really changed things around. And it's always the challenges don't stop, just because you think you're running and going, but it was fun to lay it to them.
Yeah, absolutely. You've gone from number 4 to number 3. You beat Cal, you get Oregon, Arizona State. Then you go out to a Memorial Stadium in LA. The thing that and there are only 59,000 for this game. That's one of the things that I thought. SC was not the same. They scored a total of 3 points in 2 years against your defense. That has to be a pretty satisfying thing when you go out and you beat the Trojans twice as badly as you did.
Yeah, it was great. And it was, and, walking down that ramp, and that's, you always have those memories burned in your head. And it's just, it was great. And the grass down in the warm weather, just getting after it. And
was there any memorabilia for you because of so many players, the Super Bowls, the pro teams that have been there, the Rams, the Raiders, SC, UCLA, both called it home. There's a lot of great football that took place in that season.
You do have it kind of stamped in your head as a kid growing up, and all you're right. The Olympics, and they got the track, you've seen that flame lit, so many times, and I don't know if it was Muhammad Ali that did it one time, and it was just it goes on and on. But I still remember. I think that was my first start my freshman year, when I was officially starting on the roster sheet, and I remember those old plastic studs that we wore, those cleats, and going down that. You've probably walked down and playing the Raiders a bunch of times, and it just, man, it gets slippery if you're on the, I'm this punk, freshman walking down the ramp, and there's no railing to hold on to, and I was just trying not to lose. Exactly.
Don't wipe out, Dave. Don't be that guy.
Exactly. I almost pulled my groin.
Very gingerly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, before you got to go, Brian, I've hogged up the whole conversation. I apologize.
No, you're good. Hey, this is phenomenal stuff. So I think it's just the reminiscing. Everything's really, really good. I don't really have anything to add. Honestly, it's just been entertaining as hell to listen to it and kind of get your perspective on everything and kind of going in detail with everything. It's because you can look at the box scores, you can look at the stats. Obviously that's easy, but going in depth, what was the experience like? What was the atmosphere? What was going through your head? Just kind of the extra stuff. I think it's been spectacular.
Thanks. That's great, man. No, it's fun to talk about. You guys stir up. You guys ask some great questions and make me feel relaxed, and it's fun to just follow through with this stuff with you guys.
Well, all right. Well, we're going to follow through some more. Then you beat SC again. You've got you got to be thinking about Lowry's at least a little bit because you're the front runners. You're undefeated. You're 8. You're 9. You're 10-0. Was there any portion of that where Don James or the rest of the coaching staff says, "Hey, you got to work even harder now," and they're going to beat you up in practice and make sure that you don't lose your focus so UCLA doesn't happen again? Yeah,
and I think the thing that kind of spells it out for me, what that is, that the coaches didn't need to do that. That they actually, we had matured from the sophomore year where we thought we were all that, and we realized we didn't have it where we wanted it, and otherwise it would have ended up differently. And so we really it was really just kind of in just the general game plan for us just to focus. And after the game, how you enjoy your evening, this and that, and the next day let's start getting the injuries healed up a little bit best you can, and get tuned up and get this game plan going. And
did you have any hamstring, shoulder? Did you tweak your ankle ever during that season, or did you stay relatively healthy?
Yeah, you know what, that was an actual pretty good season for me. Just just the regular stuff that we all go through. I always fought I had a groin injury from high school that was always just one of those things that never really, and then some other stuff. But it was really my senior year when stuff. I was very thankful that I was as healthy as I was that junior year for me.
Yeah,
91.
All right. Well, Oregon State, 31,000 there for that at Parker Stadium in Corvallis. That was another wipeout. 58-6 was the final. Then you got the Apple Cup, and this time they're coming to your place. 72,581 were there. I would imagine it was a little bit of a different roar when you guys took the field for warm-ups, in that there is a lot on the line here. Not only you've won the pack, you're going to go, but that undefeated regular season, obviously that was a key, and the Cougars were in the way.
Exactly, and that was what they've been thinking about all year, probably. For them to come down and have a chance, and so it was something that we really needed to take care of. And then the thing is, you don't want to start thinking ahead, because you have you're going to have some couple weeks down, and then you're going to gear back up for the Rose Bowl and this and that, and you don't even want to start talking about that kind of stuff. But but it's all reality, and it was just great that the guys took care of business like they knew they had to, and it was great. And it was the rivalry for me, it was always and people up in Washington State probably don't want to hear this, but it was it was a rivalry for me. It was this and that, but it was but no way it meant it's another game. I didn't grow up there like a lot of the guys and this and that, and so I don't know all these Cougar jokes and all this kind of stuff. I just want to go out there and smash them and have a good time and get on the bus. And so it was, but there's always some little.
Now, did you look? You mentioned SC a couple of times, Dave. What about Cal or Stanford, for being from the San Jose area just before? Was that more of the guy? Hey, I don't care what we need to do. I want to beat those guys.
Yeah.
Or was it SC?
No, you know what? So I think it was SC that really did it, and it was more of just really wanting to play well in front of family and friends, and be get that little whatever Chevrolet player of the game, whatever. But it just and honestly the biggest thing is if the coaches will leave us in to shut them out, that would be great. But that didn't always happen. And so it was, but you do what you can. But it was it was just coming back to California was fun. For the weather and the and the fans. It was just a great time.
All right, you get almost a full month, right? You said there was some downtime. Did you get a week or two for finals or something like that, or no
Yeah, that's right.
responsibilities? You play your last game. The Apple Cup is on November 23rd, and that's usually right at Thanksgiving weekend, right? It's either the day of or the day after Thanksgiving. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And then
Exactly
you don't
right.
play again until January 1st. Do you remember any of the stuff like, gosh, how do we stay busy? How do we stay together? How do we keep focusing on that ladder that's in the locker room every day when we've got
Yeah.
a couple weeks off?
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, if you're going to go home for Thanksgiving, guys will do that. You go home for a little bit and come back. And then it was just and then there's these rules, at least in the NCAA had these rules that you couldn't have official type gatherings and games until until a certain date. So myself and some of the other linebackers, we would just get together and we'd go out there and do some pass drops and that kind of stuff, just to keep the hips loose and stay together a little bit. And then of course go down to the weight room and mess around and get the rust off and get back into that kind of mindset of just staying on the edge just a little bit, and getting ready for practice. And then, when practice finally comes though, up there in Seattle, as it was, we didn't have a field house, so it was icy and snowy out there and things. And so a lot of the stuff I was worried about was not ripping my groin or something like that out there
Yep.
on the
Yep.
stuff. And it was a little, yeah, I mean, it was a little different, and you knew you were going to be coming down to 72 degrees pretty soon. So it was nice to have that in front of you. But it was kind of just making sure you kept things good, before you got out of town.
Yeah, not to summarize or what you are, but I would imagine it's a chance to rest up a little bit, get strong and get fast again. Get freshened up to where you
Exactly.
go, hey, I don't need to max out in the weight room, but
Right.
I want to be able to get 5 reps,
Yeah. Yeah.
with my
Yeah.
favorite weight.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's exactly it. And it's just kind of, getting your mind right, your body right, getting to that switch, trying to feel as healthy as you can. Um, and then kind of watch a little film here and there too, and kind of start seeing who's this Michigan or Iowa team, what are they about, who are their guys, are
Yeah,
there any are there any reads that I can steal from their stance or their movement or their lean,
right.
and guys on and off the ball, their tendencies and that kind of stuff, and just starting to kind of get into it and feel it and know it, and kind of I used to say I wanted to be in my coordinators. I wanted to be, like I wanted to know it like he knew it, and
Yeah,
what he was expecting, and that was and playing the middle linebacker, you really have to make sure, like everything's running right. And if we had a corner in the wrong position or the wrong assignment, he'd get yelled at, and then I'd get yelled at because I should have had him. I should have had him, in the right spot. And
sure.
and and here you're doing all these changes and stuff. So
Yeah,
you really wanted to make sure that everything was running right. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's all fun, and you just want to go out there and play well and dominate if you can, and enjoy the day. And the best way to do that is to know your opponent and get ready for them.
well, and knowing Jim as well, like Jim Lambright,
Yeah,
you're almost like Radar O'Reilly, where you got to know before Colonel Blake says it, that what he wants, and so it's 3rd and 3, whatever. But we'll talk about that in just a second, because I'm
yeah.
fascinated with this aspect of it. When did either Don or anyone, maybe the athletic director, once you had beaten somebody, when did the national championship come into your focus?
Yeah, that was, I it was, I think personally it was probably in a lot of our focuses, early on, just because you knew, what the results of this would be, and how things would start to fall into place. And the Washington Huskies hadn't done this. It was a thing that was it was something that was up there, and as you remember, you're in the top left corner of the world, it feels like, and you feel like you're out there, and it's special, and to finally have the Huskies on prime time and this kind of stuff was great. And so we just wanted to make sure.
This is all new, also, Dave. This is new.
It's all.
You mentioned Nebraska, right? We've talked. Michigan had won national championships. Miami, who you had to you had to split with them. Still, this is uncharted territory for you all. That's what I'm asking. I mean,
absolutely.
What you got there. That's the coolest thing of all of this is you set the ladder, and each week, hey, we do one more. Now we're there. Talk about that.
And what it was I think we knew, the confidence and the schedule we had played, and the Pac-10 back then was there was probably a good 5 bowl teams in it, and at least 4 of them would win, the bowl. I mean, it was a good conference, and so we really felt like we had played good teams. We had beaten good teams pretty significantly, and we had proven ourselves. But to do it one more time out there in front of the world, it was it wasn't a task. It was something that you're just so damn excited for. You were so excited to go out there and show the world, show the country, and it was like, in a way, I think we already knew it. But the thing is, I don't want to say don't screw it up, because that's the wrong attitude, because you don't play to not lose. I mean, you go out there to play, win, dominate. But so it was a feeling of excitement and anticipation. I think the anticipation, and you going back to talking about the weeks, it was almost like the waiting was almost the thing that killed you. I mean, the waiting, because you just wanted it, and you want to go get it, and you want to take it, but you've got to, it's on a certain date, a certain time of year, and a certain place, and it was it was something you're honored to be there, but you just wanted to get it on.
Is there any portion of, from a team perspective, if I were a fan of the Huskies, a guy that says, I'm going to spend a couple $1,000s, I'm going to go down and get a ticket to the game, I'll scalp something, I'm going to go stay there. If we're lucky, we might be able to do this. There's no luck involved with it anymore. I think you guys realize we got speed where we need speed. We got strength where we got strength. I got guys that are really smart where we need to have smart guys. We've got depth all the way around. We don't need any luck. We just need to play our game and be on our game. And if we are, I feel bad for the Wolverines.
That's it. No, that's, you nailed it. You hit every point, and it's exactly how we felt. And that was, and it's easy to say, but we ended up, it was the most fun experience that a lot of us had ever had, along with having your kids and all that kind of stuff. It was such a great moment. And then going through what we had gone through the year before, I think we really appreciated things all that much more. I think I don't want to say screwing things up at the last minute, but just kind of not knowing and appreciating where we were, and not taking care of business back there against UCLA the year before. I think that was always, I want to say it was in our minds, a little crag there in your head that you're just, but it was there, and like, you just want to make sure, there's no reason in the world we shouldn't do this, and but then let's keep thinking, like we did. Like when we first started talking today, we started talking about when you're a kid and you have that excitement and that fun and that stuff. And I think that's so important for players at every level to still, like, have some fun with it, man, and like enjoy it. And of course, it's super intense. It's there's a lot riding on it, but hey man, enjoy yourself. And some of these, I mean, we've all seen some of these. I don't know, some of these parents that probably never played the game that go freaking bonkers and scream it, and it's just like, hey man, let your kid have some fun, go out there and enjoy it, and get after it. And there's so much to learn in the game, from the game, watching the game, and you realize the importance of teammates and getting along. And I mean, when you're around the guys all that time, you're in the locker room, and you spend half your life in the locker room. It's like, I mean, you have to be a teammate and appreciate being a teammate, to make the best of things. And that's one thing I think that we did a really good job at. And it was just because everybody was just a sincere dude, man. Everybody was just real and like really had each other's backs, and like no bullshit. I mean, if somebody said something, they were good for it, man. It was about that. And it was man, there'd be guys hanging out, like, talking in the locker room, talking about personal stuff, man. It was stuff that we're all happy to help each other with,
Yeah.
and it was a brotherhood. And that term gets thrown around a lot, but that's really what we had.
Yeah, it's genuine. And I'm not disavowing any of the fun. I agree. My son's watching. There, you got to have fun, but there's also some hard work that's involved with that too.
Absolutely.
If you don't put in the hard work, then it's hard to have
no
fun. And
Yeah.
here's where you have fun: 42-7, 36-21, 56-3, 54-0, 48-0. 24-17, 29-7, 44-16, 14-3, and that was it. 58-6. Dave, there's a lot of fun
That's
that
fun.
can be had
That
there
is,
with some of those scores, because it wasn't close except for the Cal game. That's the closest that anybody came.
Right.
That's a one-score game. But everyone else was a total domination for you guys.
You're so right, and that's what it is, and it's that mentality. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, there's no fun without the work, and the work makes it fun. It's just kind of like cat chasing his tail, but it's like it's what makes it fun for you. This game wouldn't be fun if you weren't any good at it, and you weren't trying to get any better. And that's that's when it's time to move on to something else, or pick it up and get going. But it's like we had a bunch of guys that were excited about getting better, about about digging in, and improving on one thing. And I still tell guys to this very day, if I talk to high school guys or whatever they're into, I'd say, just this week, find two things to focus on, and I guess what I always felt like is the only things we really control are our effort and our attitude, and like the way that we're focusing and paying just strict attention to the things we're doing, and getting and being the best we can be. And there's a lot of stuff that's out of our control, but that stuff you can control. And so why not just maximize that, man? Lean into it. And I think when players are doing that, I really think that's when they're having the most fun. Is when they really analyze themselves, listen to their coaches' feedback, and find some things. And sometimes it's just the most simple things to focus on. Maybe it's just how high somebody's coming off the ball, or the way you're making a break, or the way your hands are inside when you're blocking, and this and that. Just focus on a couple things every week, and your whole game will improve. Your whole game and all your techniques will end up improving, just because you're focusing on one or two smaller items.
And then you have the epiphany where you're watching Ricky Ellison and he's playing, and you go, man, I'm getting it right. And then you build off of that, and it turns, I'm going to focus on, because we're never good enough, right? You're always need to improve, even though you win the national championship. And we'll talk about that in just a second. There's still room for any athlete to get better, to improve, to but you got the win. You're hoisting a trophy above your head. That's a big trophy too. That one that's in that's you didn't get
Yeah.
to really carry that one around like the Super Bowl trophy, but
Right.
you know, did you have the rose in your teeth like somebody? Did you end the game with one of those?
You know what? I don't think I did that, man. But I had a lot of good hugs, man, and a lot of good laughs, and it was just a good. It was one of those times you didn't want to come off of the field. You know, you just wanted to stay out there, and that's it's such a classic setting that we've all been looking at since we were little kids, and so it was just it was just so fun to be out there on that.
Now, did
On
you have to
that.
wait for Miami to? I mean,
Well, you know what?
Miami
So
wins. Talk
yeah,
a
so
little bit about
officially
that.
we did. Yeah, so officially we did, but we knew we had. I mean, we knew we were we were the best that year, and it was I've got some buddies on that Miami team, and yeah, so we split it with them, and that was it. But we always felt like, and I'm sure they did too, but we always felt like we would have had some fun with them. We would have had a good a good game somewhere, sometime. Yeah.
No kidding. Well, you come back. I would imagine you spend the night in LA. Is it the next morning? You get up a little bit too early, maybe for that flight back up to Seattle. But was there a whole cavalcade of fans waiting for you at the airport?
Yeah, it was great. So when we landed back at SeaTac, it was there were a lot of folks out there, and it was a special moment. And I think with the the Huskies, I'm not sure if they were it really hadn't happened before that I don't think people knew what to do. I mean, like there wasn't a parade until like the next spring, and there wasn't. I think it was just a little bit of, hey, so what do we do now? It was kind of that, and it was that feel.
Well, you're on a quarter system too, so technically speaking, you got to go back to class the following Monday, right?
You're right. Exactly right. And so it was just like, man, what's going on here? And so, yeah, it was, I don't want to say mass confusion, but it was just, you could definitely feel that, the athletic program and this, I mean, they didn't know what to do, what to expect. Hey, I mean, hey, this is a great year, but what do we do now? And it was just like, and I think for a lot of people, it was just, well, let's get ready for the next one, and which I'm all for, but it was, but it would have been great if we kind of had a little joy. And it was a nice parade in the spring, but I mean, half the guys, all the seniors were gone, and so it was, so it's like, oh crap, man, this is not how it's supposed to flow. And so it was a little different, but you're just happy you won and you got the ring, and I just hope if they ever win it again, and I'm sure they will, that they do it right. And I don't know what right is. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm sure every team does it a little different, every program. But man, let the guys enjoy themselves a little bit.
Well, I'm not saying they got it wrong, but there's a wrong way to do it, and Washington really struggled with that. But you mentioned just a moment ago about, hey, if we got to just wind it up and do it all over again, real quick, going into your senior year.
Mm-hmm.
You're at Arizona State. You play Wisconsin. You get Nebraska again. They're ranked 12th. You get SC again. You get Cal, who's ranked there. You got to go to Oregon. I think it's the first time that you played at Oregon. You beat Pacific. You beat Stanford, who is ranked number 15. You're what, 7-0? You've got like a personal 22-game winning streak going there for the school.
Yeah.
Unbelievable how good you guys were up until you go to Arizona, and you lose there in Tucson.
That's right. And so we were really, I mean, the year was going great. We really felt like we were poised to, to do it again. And it just, personally speaking, I was banged up. I had a cracked foot and was doing some things, walking around in a boot, every week and this and that. And I'm sure a lot of guys were, but but your eyes are focused on the prize, and so you just keep going and you're going. And it was frustrating to lose to Arizona. They were a good team. They had a good defense, and our offense obviously struggled on that game. And it was I remember just playing down there in the heat. I loved it and enjoyed myself. But it just kind of took the wind out of your sails to lose that one down to you, especially after that streak that we were on. It was It was, we were going to the Rose Bowl and that, but it just, and then it was, it was a frustrating end. I think that might have been our, I don't know if that was like our eighth or ninth game or something like that or whatever, but it was there, and it was frustrating, and we had a lot of guys. We were not even close to being as healthy as we were the year before, and I think it. The pros and cons, to the change of the game, to the rules and this and that. I honestly give credit. Guys don't need to bang full out every day, and like we used to often do back in the day. We used to, and so there are some pros to helping guys stay healthy and this and that. But in those days, it was an old school mentality, and if the rules said we could hit, we were going to go out there and go. And so we had some guys that had been playing for a long time, and 40 something starts and this and that straight, and we were starting to get kind of beat up, and especially on the defensive side of the ball. I didn't realize it until later, but we had incredible defense, but not many of us played very long in the league after we were.
Yeah.
I actually had some scouts tell me, hey Hoff, you'll play, but you're not playing for long. You're not, and I, back in those days, junior year, you think you're bulletproof, and it's the way you play and the way you guys practice here. There's no, there's no way, and but you're like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and sure. I guess he did, yeah.
Well, it's amazing how fragile it can turn into. We had Mike McCoy on as a guest last week. Mike played at Notre Dame. He was in that 1966 game. He was a freshman, so he couldn't play back in those days.
Yeah.
When Notre Dame and Michigan State played for that 10-10 tie. It was a game that was really that put college football on the map. Mike, tell us something about that game. He goes, well, we took the train. When we got into East Lansing, our star running back, who had a bad shoulder anyways, slipped on that little step stool to get you and he hits on his shoulder. He's done. He can't play. Our starting center goes out in the second play of the ball game. The backup had to block Bubba Smith all day. Terry Hanratty, our quarterback, goes down. Our backup quarterback, who's a diabetic, has an allergic reaction and whatever. He just mentioned 5 or 6 things that added up to where we didn't win that game. We tied, but we didn't win it. I imagine there's a few things. Again, I mentioned the fragility. This guy was hurt. My foot was bothering me. Certain other guys, it's hard to put a streak, 22 stinking games together. Unbelievable. And then you go to Arizona, and what was it? 16-3 was the final there. Close game, but you end up on the wrong end of that one.
Yeah, exactly.
And you see how worn out everybody is. I mean, gosh, we've been going full speed for 2.5 years.
Yeah, I remember on the plane flight back, man, not to sound like it, but I remember, I couldn't sit down, with my back and everything. I was, and I couldn't even sit in my seat. I think I did for the takeoff and landing, but you realize you just can't. And, that's the way planes are, that's the way team planes are. But it's like a ambulance going back, trying to fly back home. But it's yeah, sometimes it is. Yeah. I'm sure you got some stories too, and it's just like, and people are laid out, and they're just but especially after a loss, I think everything hurts a little more, So that's what it was. But they earned it. Arizona earned it. Yeah.
Well, then you beat Oregon State, and then I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian. Please.
I don't mean to interrupt, guys. This has been awesome. I got to head out, unfortunately, but this has been awesome. Appreciate chopping up with you guys. It's been a lot of fun. I hate to leave. Honestly, I'm having a great time, and it's been awesome reminiscing with you, Dave. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, man. Nice to meet you, brother.
Yeah, I'll see you guys.
You got it.
All right. Yeah, Brian had a commitment at 20 minutes ago, so we'll take over real quick. You beat Oregon State. You're playing with one leg, I imagine. Then you go back to Washington State. You lose that. You still win the Pac. You get to go to the Rose Bowl again, but and then you lose to Michigan. So 3 losses in 4 games. Right. That's got to be a punch in the face from, we were looking at repeat back-to-back champions to where, gosh, it's over.
That's right.
But it's over.
No, that's right. Exactly. It was not the finish, that you wanted. And my brother and I had some talks on the field after that last Rose Bowl, and it was, man, it was a blessing to get to play with him. And I mean, imagine being a linebacker and calling the plays in the huddle, and looking down, and your little brother. Well, he's a lot bigger than me, but my
Right.
younger brother's,
Yeah.
right in front of you, man. It's pretty.
Let's go. You got to
It's
get
pretty
this.
cool.
Get this. Get past. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you're
Yeah.
encouraging him. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my brother. I mean, yeah. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
imagine
yeah,
how cool it is.
exactly. So it was a special year, and you just wish it would have ended differently, and that's all you can say. Yeah.
Well, I would imagine still no regrets, though, Dave. What an amazing time to be there. And again, the book reminisces on all this. Before we move on to anything else, tell us how we can get a copy of the book. I'm sure
So
there's lots of insight that we didn't go over today.
yeah, it's the Husky Hitman. I'm Derek Johnson, who's an old sports writer up in the Seattle area, and he got in my ear about doing a book, and years ago we finally got around to it. And there's so many things about the book that we get into, and things about my teammates and off the field experiences and that kind of stuff. But yeah, you just go online, and it's the Husky Hitman by Derek Johnson, and he threw my name on there, but I was just the guy he was getting information off of. And it was yeah, some old funny pictures in there of me and my brothers, and it's just it's just kind of a fun read, a simple read, and it's just based for and hopefully older folks enjoy it, but also younger folks enjoying the meaning of being a good teammate, and being and knowing what to expect from each other.
I would imagine that during that process, the interviewing of some of your teammates, you got some insight from their perspective that you hadn't thought of before. Real eye-opening stuff about, wait a second, I didn't know that you thought about it that way, or it was.
Yeah,
What were some of the things that you really became fascinated by in terms of the inquisition of other guys' emotions, and then there's
right.
them telling their stories?
No, that's a great question, and I think you learn about from their angle and their perspective how they saw this go down, and you see even more, I think, what the bonds that you build over the years, especially in college, and it might be tougher today with guys moving around a little bit more, but but really building the bonds that are football and beyond, and the trust, and I think the appreciation. And I think over time it just helps you appreciate folks out in the world. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're coming across, it's just their view on things. It's I think we assume a lot of times that we know how somebody feels, or what they're thinking about, but it's not until you really hear it, right from the horse's mouth, that you do, and it's encouraging, and it's fun to see how they saw it at that time in their life.
Yeah, and I would imagine also, especially with maybe a younger player at that time, Dave, you did something at the local bar or grill, and
Yeah,
you ordered a burger, and
yeah,
you said something really kind to somebody, and that meant the world to me. Little things that you were involved with that
yeah,
you had no idea. You were just being yourself, but it had an influence on somebody else, and it helped them have that epiphany, like what Ricky Ellison provided for you. I watched the way that the way you moved your feet, your intensity, the way you made the calls. You owned the linebacker position, and I wanted to play like you. Was there anything like that you earned or learned or gained from the experience as well?
yeah. I think it was the overall, going through the process of Derek asking me all these questions and kind of digging into things, and then even the questions that he would ask me at times would pry some other things, or for example, he might see something that I thought was a lesser or a bigger deal than myself, and he would kind of elaborate on it, and I would realize, well, maybe that was a bigger thing, and that really meant something to the
Right.
fans, or what have you. And so I think it's always important. I think what you learn from it all is that everybody, don't guess exactly what everybody thinks and stuff. Don't game it. And obviously we have to a little bit, but but at some point, sit back and let somebody express themselves to you.
Yeah, and let them tell you the story, and
Yeah,
be
that's
quiet
right.
while they're doing it, right? Hey,
Exactly.
I read a book by Bo Schembechler. It was talking about coaching, and it was kind of after he was done, kind of a business. How do you run your company?
Mm.
I'll tell you how I ran my football team, and there's some similarities. Tony Dungy, after they won the Super Bowl, he wrote a book. I read that. It was a very interesting book.
Mm.
Don James isn't that kind of guy, is he?
Right. Yeah. And he's really been, and God rest his soul. He passed away a few years ago, but he's not really out there, and I think he prefers just to kind of stay low level. And I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but if some of these authors came up and asked him, he'd probably, um, probably keep him at arm's length and not, he there are some books out there, and I think Derek, the author of the Husky Hitman, has done a couple with him. But I don't think Don James would have ever, done his own thing.
Yeah, Urban Meyer and Lou Holtz, and you can go through countless coaches that have moved on and have been personalities, if you will.
Right.
Don was the guy that put on the hat and took it off, and then I don't know anything about him other than that. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
he appreciated his privacy. And I guess what happens in Seattle stays in Seattle. In other words, this is our family, and I protect it, and I'm not gonna tell a bunch of stories. I don't need to do that.
Yeah, and I think he was always one that he was about, his family and faith, and I think he would have to have a real reason, to do it. And I think he felt like it was his story, and whoever needed to know it knew it, and we'll call it good. And
Yeah.
Nick Saban played for him back at Kent State, and
Yeah.
and he's had a lot of kind of that coaching tree thought is he's had a lot of guys come after him, and I'm sure they have their own personalities, but they probably have a little bit of Don James in them too.
Yeah, the influence that he had. We just did a piece on Monday on Jack Lambert. So Jack Lambert, Nick Saban, and a familiar face
That's
in
right.
Washington, but certainly
Pinkel.
in Missouri, Gary Pinkel
Yeah.
was where they were all on that same 1970 team that went through the massacre, is what they call it, right?
Yeah.
The 4 kids
Yeah.
that were killed
That's
there.
right. That's right.
And just a common thread that they all have, and that includes Don. Early in
Yeah.
his coaching
Right.
career, and obviously he was able to build something that. Just look at the trophy case. When I went there in the early '80s, there was a Rose Bowl. I think there was an Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl always has those fake oranges in there,
That's right.
right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
They
Exactly.
stay forever. You can't use real oranges because they'd spoil. But
Yeah.
between Aloha Bowls and Fiesta Bowls and all that kind of, what a trophy case that he has assembled there for the university.
Absolutely. And going back to the recruiting thing, I think that just the consistency of time and what he did up there over the years, and brought good guys in. And he maybe didn't get some of the players that USC got back in those days, but I always thought too, it takes somebody a little special, really football focused mind to even go up there in the cold and rain, and go up there and get into it up there. And it was and that's going back to our classes, the ones before and right after us. They were it was all special guys, and I think they looked at it that way too. They looked at it kind of with the warrior mentality. And there's lots of times I thought about being in my shorts and flip flops and back in Cali, but it was football time. It wasn't that time in my life. So
Yeah, I put it this way on a couple of occasions. There are plenty of, no, there aren't plenty. There's a few
Yeah.
6'6" like you said, your brother's 6'6"
Yeah.
sub 4.7 40, just enough, SAT or ACT scores to get in, strong enough, whatever. Those they go to Alabama, they go to SC, they go to Michigan. One of them goes to Tennessee, one of them goes to Florida. But what about the guy who's 6'4.5" that is just as good? And they don't look at him. So that guy's got a chip on his shoulder because Alabama didn't want him, but he wants to play somewhere. And if he goes to Washington, there's enough guys that have the same chip on their shoulder. Guess what?
There it is. And that's a great picture you just painted. And I think that's exactly what it was. We weren't in the we weren't getting Napoleon Kaufmans and that kind of stuff.
Not the elites.
Exactly. And so we were just all that. And then as it started to hum, and after that first Rose Bowl and stuff, then it was just like, all of a sudden the Napoleons and all these guys and the Tommy Smiths and all these different guys started saying, hey man, what's this Husky thing about? And then, and then when these coaches come down and start recruiting the guys, it's like, no, it's not just talk. I mean, we're going to kick everybody's ass this year. Come be a part of it. We'd love to have you. And, I still remember a guy from UCLA, who's the linebacker coach. He was talking to me in the library in my high school, and he says, and I actually had a recruiting trip to go down there, and it's a beautiful campus and all, but I remember he said, Dave, we're going to go to the Rose Bowl with you or without you. And so it's just like, do you want to come down here? And I thought, man, that just that just turned me off. I'm like, what's he talking about? What's this guy like? We're going, and and hey, I know I'm just a regular, 6'2", 200-pound linebacker coming out of high school, but what are you talking about? You're going with me or without me? And I mean, I don't know if they made the postseason. So it's nice to have something to back up what you say. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And UCLA probably didn't. I know Bear Bryant had used that line on a couple of kids too. I've heard others who recruited Alabama.
But it's true there. It's true
there. At the University of Alabama, we're going to win with you or without you. Well, that's a lot different than, we're going to go to the Rose Bowl with or without you. Well, when did you go?
Exactly. Yeah.
When's the last time you've been?
Yeah, exactly.
And you ended up going to 3. So I guess it was without you, Bruin coach.
That's right. Exactly right, man. But I remember that.
Tie up the Husky experience for me. You end up your senior year. Yes, you lost a couple of games there at the end, but when you're done and you get back up to Seattle, you don't have a whole heck of a lot of time, do you, before someone is going to say, hey, you need an agent, you need to start getting ready for the combine, and there's more. You don't get a whole heck of a lot of time to enjoy that experience before you got to go back to work, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. It was, now, when you look back, and even just like a few years after I look back at that time, I really wish I would have had some advice on some things. And it was for one, it was, you played on these postseason games, you go into the Hula Bowl and the Shrine and this kind of stuff. And it was, and I think these things are dying. I'm going to take, hold on. And it was, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turn this up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And but being beat up and having injuries and coming off the Rose Bowl and then getting on the plane and going, flying and playing these games and keep practicing. It was an honor to play in some of this stuff, and it was really cool to meet some of these guys that you'd been playing against for years, and sit down and have dinner and a beer with them. And it was I was really thankful for that, but it wasn't what my body needed. It was time. I really should have rehabbed and got back after it and just healing my body. But it was I mean, that's life. You learn things, and sometimes there's a whole plan out, and that's one thing that we didn't always do back in those days. The greatest at Washington, the prep guys, and so it was and it was. But I'll tell you what was a great time was I was honored to be in one of the finalists for the Butkus Award.
Butkus,
and I went out there to Orlando, and man, what an incredible person Mr. Butkus is, and his family, and met some of his great friends who I'm still friends with today, and we just, man, had a great time. And they bring your mom and dad out too, so it was just fun to have some fun, and go
out. In
out.
the mid-60s, before his knees went out, can you talk about how big that man's hands are? What a huge human being he was, especially for 30, 40 years earlier. And his ability to just dominate a football game just because of his size and his speed.
He was, and he was just he owned the middle. I mean, you didn't want to come across there, you didn't want to try to run the ball. I could just imagine these guys on offense back in those days just thinking, "Oh man, not again. We got to do this, and we got to go to Chicago." The thing is, like I always say, the real, and I don't know if this is your experience or not too, but like the baddest dudes that I've ever met are usually like the nicest guys too, and like and that's him, and I only met him was there for a few days, but it was, man, what a genuine good guy, and humble, and so nice to my family, and just his friends are all great guys and respectful, and it was an honor to there was after one of those USC games down there in LA, my brother was wearing my jersey after the game, and so you can picture my youngest brother, man. He's probably like a sophomore in high school or something, and he hears this voice come up, and he says, "Hey, Hoffman, tell your brother good game." And he turns around, and it's Butkus. It's standing there waiting for his son Matt to come out of the tunnel, and my brother was just like, he just like crapped his pants. It's just like, wow, did that really just happen?
Wow.
Yeah, but all the small stuff.
And that's a kind of a neat thing. Was there any aha moments for you when you were preparing for either the Shrine or the East West or any of the other blue? Did you play in the Blue Gray game also?
No, I did. No, it was just Shrine on the hula for me.
Okay.
Yep.
Where Marty Schottenheimer or Al Davis or any of the other coaches or personnel directors or general managers was it a pinch me moment when you're going, wow, I got a chance to really do this, and they're watching me?
Yeah, I think it was R.C. Slocum was down there, was one of the coaches, and I remember him just telling me some nice things and about watching us play, watching myself, and watching our defense in general, and that really, and I said, man, this guy noticed us, and in particularly our front and how we played the run and that kind of stuff, and I thought it was humbling. It was humbling to hear that from a star like him, and then to meet so many guys out there that you have that you have so much respect for and appreciated playing against, and those are the guys that you try to find after the game, if you could, on the way back to the tunnel, and just to give them a slap on the neck and tell them you appreciate how they play and that kind of stuff. But it was nice to be able to actually have time and sit down with them a little bit and shoot the bull and kind of get to know them. Know them a little bit and kind of know what they're about, and I mean, some of the guys are still shoot the bull with today, and it's just fun that you have something in common. They just signed with a different school than you, and so it's but they would have been a great teammate,
Well, and I think I've said this before to different personnel within the athletic world. Girls generally need to become friends in order to be winning teammates.
Yeah.
Boys need to win in order to end up being friends later on in life. You got the opportunity to win on numerous occasions there at Washington. So you've established where every reunion, hey, what's going on? I get all these other people that you've had a chance to meet. Winning has certainly opened that opportunity for you to be a part of a bunch of great relationships after you're done there.
Yeah, you're right, and I think football in particular really kind of shows. I just don't want to sound corny, like what you're made of, but kind of who you are and what you're willing to do, and the effort that you're willing to put out, and kind of what you're going to do in a situation that's potentially not the best, and I guess it kind of shows you what people are made of in a simple way, and so to meet some of these guys that you appreciate in that way, and like you said, you see what people are made of, what they can do, and what's important to them, and this game that this country just loves, for obviously, and I support it. I mean, I fell in love with it when I was a kid, and I think this whole country is, just loves American football, and it's a beautiful thing, and it shows so much about people and their character and who they are and how they work together. And back in those days, I'd hear so many people talking about these coaches, this and that about it's tells you how to live life and this and that, and I think, man, this is getting corny. But then after you play it and all this, it really does reveal. It brings things out about us and who we are. Lets us show, some of those intangibles, and then also helps us, realize what we can do, when the chips are down and you're physically hurt and your team is counting on you, and more importantly, you're counting on yourself, man, to get it done. And it's I think it just brings all that out, and it's a great it's just a great picture for kind of what people are made of.
Yeah, I've always said that outside of the military, it's very difficult to find something other than football. Now, there are other sports that are out there, but something that where you have to put so much on the line, depend on others around you, have it be serious, but yet it's hard. There's nothing easy about it. And we mentioned that a little bit. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's so rewarding when you're able to do well. You won the championship in the Pac-10 for 3 years in a row. Oregon State, for example, that year, they go 1-9-1. Now, they can have reunions, and their guys may love each other in the same way that you love your Husky teammates. That's what makes it so great. It doesn't matter. They have great experiences that they have, even though they lost a lot of games. I lost so many that I don't even want to count when I was in college. You won more games in one single year than I did in 4 years in college. So, but you know what? We both get to share experiences and love and appreciation for the game.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what I tell people about my high school. My 3 years of varsity, I won 10 games total. And so that was, and so, I always tell people, hey, just because you're going to a school that maybe doesn't have the greatest record, just keep competing. And, they'll find you.
Tom Hanks in that movie, A League of Their Own, says to Gina Davis near the end of the movie, when she says it got too hard. And he goes, the hard is what makes it great.
Oh, that's so true, man.
So true. All right, now, real quick. Now, I want to be respectful of your time. We're probably going to need to invite you back on just to talk about the Secret Service and everything.
Happy to.
But you've got 5 other teammates. 6 of you were drafted that year. Lincoln Kennedy in the first round. I was kind of surprised that Billy Joe went in front of Mark Brunell, but the Raiders certainly weren't. Jamie Fields, then you have Mark, yourself, and then Darius Turner. Talk about the feeling of, wow, on draft day, they called my name. What would that mean to you?
Well, I'll tell you what, and obviously, as you know, it's something that, from when you're a kid, you think about. I didn't have it all played out in my head, and I didn't have any idea when I would go, and I knew teams were aware of physical condition, but I knew I wasn't going super high, but it was I was thrilled to get that phone call. I was thrilled to, and when the Bears came, and as you remember, I would have. It was, and I remember talking to some of the scouts back in Ditka's days, and I think maybe it was a couple of those old scouts that might have encouraged them to draft me. But it was a different regime with Wannstedt than when I got there. But it was an honor to get grabbed, and then to sign the contract and do that, and again go to a new city and just start working.
Be fair with me, Dave, and I'm not trying to criticize in any way, shape, or form, but sometimes I'll ask a harder question, and if it was it your 40 time? Was it did they not like something at the combine that you weren't able to do? Was it the foot injury? Was it something else that sometimes when you reveal an injury, you're really opening yourself up to be put at the end of the line instead of the front of the line?
Well, that's what, and so getting back to what I was talking about, getting advice. I really wish I would have. So when I saw some of my linebacker buddies not running the 40 at the combine, hey man, I didn't even know that was an option. I thought when you signed up for it, and there's no, I should not have been out there with my foot, man. I could not. It was a mess, and just trying to walk around. And then I didn't have in the shoes I wore. I wasn't allowed to wear. I borrowed somebody else's, and it was a mess. And I really should have, gone and done the things, but it was actually the last table I was on with all the doctors that somebody asked about my foot, and I thought it was kind of like, again, I didn't have advice, so I thought it was pretty much like, back when we played, you would minimally share stuff with your trainer so you could make sure you got out there on game day. And so you would just, it's good. Yeah, it's good. You would say maybe enough for them to give you some treatment, but so you could, hopefully heal, but you also wanted to make sure you could play. And so it was, it was all that. And on the last table I was on, the guy, I think he was from the Browns, doctor, asked about my foot, and I looked at him like, he's crazy. And then he goes, no. And then he obviously got word from somebody. We've been trying to hide it all year. And so when I'd go like down at that Oregon game, and I was wearing a boot, and Coach James, everybody wore the same T-shirts for practice, and he goes, just go up and hide somewhere in the stadium. We just don't want everybody to know that you're not able to practice and stuff. And so it was something that I really should have just not performed. It didn't. I don't know if it hurt me a whole lot, but it definitely didn't help.
Well, when you got a line of 13, 15 inside linebackers from Wisconsin or San Jose State or USC, and they're all in a line, and one of them's got a foot injury, guess who moves to the end of the line?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it was and so it was frustrating, and and it was something that happened in that Cal game. I snapped a guard through him, and was making a tackle for a loss on the guy, and I was and this guard, I can still picture his face. He turned, he jumped on the back of my legs, and just like bent my foot like long ways, like a hot dog bun. It just totally, and it was bad, man. And I really, but you know how it is. I mean, the year we had before, you just want to keep playing, and and playing with my brother. What's that?
Was that more of a metatarsal, bone, or was it an ankle?
Exactly. It was metatarsal, and there was a small fracture, and then in the X-rays, it was just like black from, I think it was just blood, but it was just a major contusion type thing.
Wow.
And it was a real different injury, and it was one that was just hard to kind of get up on your toes, type thing, and.
Right.
It was just, but I don't want to get into it and make it. I mean, everybody's playing hurt, so it's the thing. But it did affect. It's one of those things you'd rather have a shoulder or something. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if there's either ors, but it's just it didn't help anything.
Yeah. again, the fragility of the body, even with something as simple as, oh, it's just a little bone in my foot. No, it inhibits everything. Oh,
Right.
it's just my shoulder. No, you can't play.
Well, exactly.
You've only got one shoulder.
And I think if I was 245 or something, or 250, and I think I probably played like somebody bigger than myself, but I didn't have the numbers as far as, I was 6'2" and, hardly even 230 at the combine, and so I wasn't a big dude. And,
Now, did they measure you at 6'2", or were you 6'1" and 7/8"?
Oh,
right?
no, I was 6. Yeah, I was 6'1" and change. And you know what? And that's the other thing with the neck. I mean, every year in my physical, I kept getting a little shorter, and I thought it was the guy measuring me. And I'd always look at him sideways, and then I realized in that senior year and then even later, I saw my X-rays and MRIs. I'm like, oh, C3 and 4 become one big vertebrae. Yeah, but I mean that's how we all played back then.
Yeah, they have no problem in the league making you literally shorter and decreasing just by a little bit. I've been 6'2" my whole life. Now you're 6'1" and 5'8".
Yeah, and change.
Shut up, kid, or I'll put you at 6'1"1/4. You know?
I don't even know if I was 6'1" 1/2 and then when I left the league, I don't even know if I'm barely over 6'1" anymore. But yeah, it's all good.
Well, you got to share some great time with some wonderful people. Several went on to the National Football League. You get to go to the Bears for a little while. Would you mind terribly if we invited you back? Because I'd love to finish up talking.
No, let's do that. Hey, listen, you know what? Have me back. Hey, just let me know. Kind of a good time and date for you, and we'll do it.
Yeah, because there's just too much. Especially.
You know what? You're right, and exactly, and I know we both have stuff to do this afternoon, but just holler back at me whenever it works for you. And I feel like I've known you for 10 years, man. But thanks for being good, and I really appreciate your show and the way you handle things, man.
Well, thank you for that. So here's what we'll do, folks. The career, when I was done, I was asked once, hey, have you ever considered writing a book? So I put together, my title is going to be, what do you do when you're done? And Dave, when you were done at Washington, what do you do? Your whole second half of your life has just been as amazing as the first, and I'd like to go into that in depth. So we'd like to honor you with that. We've been on for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So we're going to let you go right now. We appreciate you being a part of the show, and then we'll invite you back. So with an open invitation, I want to say thank you to all of our folks who tuned in today. Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, thank you so much. For Vincent Turner, who wasn't able to be with us today, he invited Brian to be a part of it. We should let Brian ask another couple of questions, Dave. We should have done that, but
next time. Yeah,
we all make mistakes. But for everybody here that's been a part of it, we want to say thank you to Dave Hoffmann, a national champion and a national treasure for what he was able to do at the University of Washington. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day.